Hello, hello guys, and welcome to episode 7 of Excellent Conversations, and what has been a pretty hectic week for us all, but like, first I want to introduce you to my co-host, Buddy, you might imagine is unavailable to join us.
Daniel, I'm gonna get you now.
Charlotte, so how are you?
Am I not enough of a token now? Do you have to go above? Is that why you wanted Freema?
I don't know, but how are you anyway?
Good. You're gonna get it though after the stream for saying that.
Oh well. And we're returning back to the channel because they can't get a name after the there's it's the one the only problem being how are you?
Hello, all the better for seeing you two. Thanks for having me back, you crazy fool.
Yeah.
Greetings to Garbage and Wendology in the chat there. It's good to see
Hello.
you. And Sadako, hello.
Who I think we've maybe got him to rethink about an episode of Doctor Who he didn't like from our last watch along.
That's right. Yeah, our Peter Davison watch along. Yes.
He's gonna give it another go.
So to start off, Charlotte is going to tell us a bit about a show that she's been watching that me and have already gone. So.
Oh yes.
Yeah, so on we go. Charlotte, yours.
Well, I don't know if you heard about this problem. It's the Netflix it's set in the Holmes universe, but it's called The Irregulars. So it's focusing on like the kids. And I saw like the trailers, and I was like, oh, this doesn't actually look that terrible. Like they've been clever. They've kept it as we want to do Holmes and Watson, but we're going to make our own characters.
Well, actually, they do. I think they do actually exist in one or two of the Conan Doyle books.
Yeah,
the characters. Yeah.
So I like that approach when they've gone. We obviously want to use like a world, and we want to set in a world, but we're going to get an angle they haven't really done in television. Because I do think Holmes and Watson has sort of become hard to do new because we've had so many versions of it. And I'll say the positives first because I do think it's not fair. I think it's slightly unfair to bash the whole thing. Like the main cast, I actually really liked. Like the actually regulars themselves, I actually found them quite funny and charming. And it was technically a female lead, like with the sisters, and they didn't do my head in. And it's got that bad now that if I watch anything females and I don't want to like scream, but by the end of it, I'm quite happy.
Yes, I understand that exactly.
So I was like, oh, they're quite nice, and I like the whole supernatural sort of thing that they've gone with it. It's because basically the Irregulars investigate these supernatural cases that Holmes
so it's
and
like
Watson.
Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, but a lot more adult because it's Netflix. So I like supernatural stuff. I'll always give it a bit of a go. And I will say this, I do think there was some good writing and like the actual relationship between the kids. You can tell they've been on the streets, that they've built this family. So those are the positives. But what they've done to Watson.
Right.
Oh God.
Oh God, right. So I've said my positives.
Here we go.
I'm just going to come out and say it. Watson's now gay in this.
Oh, of course he
for
is.
Holmes. And they write it as literally he's like a lovesick little puppy for Holmes. And it's like Holmes doesn't pay attention to him enough. And it's as soon as they revealed it at the end, so I was like, because I heard that people weren't liking this show, and I was like, I don't see like the obvious reason not to like it yet. And then I got to like the second to last episode where they did the reveal of Watson, and I was just like, oh, okay, now I understand. And it was just so cliche.
Yeah,
it was just so cliche, and it was a bit fanficky the way they did it.
Yeah, so, I haven't watched it, so I mean, I just by going off what you just told me, it's like I've already seen the diverse cast.
Yes.
And that throws me immediately because it just takes me back to sort of those episodes of Doctor Who where you've got this incredibly diverse cast in history in Britain or in the UK or in the British Armed Forces from the Edwardian or Victorian period. And it just simply was not like that. And we've got people like Moffat saying we created a world which we would like it to have been rather than what it was. I think that's incredibly disingenuous. I think it's harmful for a generation that don't seem to understand or appreciate history for what it was. And it wasn't diverse. And I've had arguments with people online who actually really believe that Victorian London was a hub of diversity.
Yeah, but that's the issue, because that's now what's going through television. And I'm going to be honest, when I did see that, I don't know if I've become immune to this now that I've seen it so many times that I sort of just went, okay. But if I like the story...
That's what they rely on. They rely on people just to be browbeaten into acquiescence and just to go, right, well, that's just the way it is and that's it. I'll have to watch it.
I've always said, though, like, I don't like chucking a whole show out if there's little bits that we would say are woke, because I don't think that's fair. But, so that's why I saw that, and I was like, okay, you're obviously towing the party line here, let's put it that way. That you were deliberately saying everything's diverse. There were all these different types of different races and groups in London in this time. And no, history is quite plain that London was not like that. But so I was sort of like, oh, I'll see what it's. But as soon as the Watson reveal happened, I was just like, okay, so now you're doing a deliberate virtue, like a really deliberate virtue signal. Because if you know Holmes and Watson, if you've read the books, if you've looked at any of the more traditional, let's say, interpretations of those stories, it's very clearly a brother bond. Like, they are close, they do care for each other, but there is not a hint of anything else.
Well, that's it. They have to slip all these things in because of tick boxing and quotas and blah, blah, blah. And they don't care what they... deconstruct or reconstruct or whatever you want to call it in this sort of post-Marxist, post-modernist nonsense that they keep foisting upon people against their will for the real privileged people, the so-called minorities who are so privileged they even have protected statuses. And I include myself within that. And so do you, Charlotte, and so do you, Daniel. And I think really it speaks volumes when you've got people like us coming on and just going, we don't want that. We don't want to be patronized. We don't want to have to see ourselves constantly on TV represented 24/7. Because it's not a mirror of reality. It's not a reflection of the world that we either live in now, and especially certainly not the one that we didn't live through, thank God, in history.
Yeah. Well, no, and that's the thing. It's the way it's been done. It's like I said with the way Watson it was done. It just felt out of place. The way he basically confessed in the scene to the one of the main irregulars, and they didn't, like, you could tell he was protective of Holmes, because this is what I did like. Sorry, this is the other one good thing I quite liked about it. They didn't show Holmes till about the third or fourth episode. So I was like, at least
Yeah.
they're being confident enough to not show Holmes straight away.
Yeah.
He's sort of been in the background, he's been hinted at. And the actor was really good, actually. I can't think of his name. He was a cracking actor. And he actually played a very good Holmes. But it just felt like it was just done for the virtue signal.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. Like, when they do these things in television, it's not natural feeling, because they can't write these characters natural. Like, and it seems to be a problem they all have in industry right now.
Yeah, and it's not just that; it's also rewriting history, and I think that's incredibly, as I say, incredibly dangerous for a generation which seems almost willfully ignorant of history, and showing sort of openly an openly homosexual man in Victorian England, in London. You only need to go and look at what happened to Oscar Wilde when he got outed as a homosexual. He served hard labor in prison for, you know, unnatural crimes, you know, like, that's how it was perceived back then. And as for having a diverse cast, like yes, of course there were Chinese people in London. Yes, there were black people in London, but there were a tiny fraction of people who never really went beyond the docks, because they were often sailors, traders, etc. And very few settled in London, mainly because they were not welcome in London. You had signs on pub doors and places of residence where they had signs in the door saying no blacks, no Chinese, no Irish.
Yeah, and just another thing, like, and this thing I'm noticing, we cannot have in current media friendships between the same sexes. It's not allowed anymore. You can't have two female characters that are close but are friends or best friends or see each other like sisters.
They're going to be sisterin'.
Yeah, all guys now. And that's what Holmes and Watson is built on. It's very clearly brothers.
Yeah,
it's such a clear thing.
With the cast as well, you know, you've got a diverse cast. The chances of them being friends was very unlikely because of that distrust back then, because it was so unusual to see someone from a foreign country with a different skin color or different, you know, facial look or whatever. And that's just the way it was. It's a hard truth. It's a hard reality, and it's very uncomfortable. But I think it's the duty of creators to represent history properly and not make it this. Okay, it's in a context of being a fantasy with Sherlock Holmes in it and ghosts and supernatural events going on. Fine, I get that. But at the same time, you're trying to create a world which doesn't jar people. You've got to make a successful supernatural horror or whatever. You've got to make the world in which it inhabits all the more realistic. Otherwise, it's just completely, you know, you're taken out of it totally. The more real the circumstances, the more the threat appears, because it's more closer to home. When you create something set in a historical context and change the historical context, and then also on top of that make it a fantasy horror thing as well, you've got all these layers which just kind of take the audience to sort of one step further away from suspension of disbelief. And often it's more the things that we find familiar or relatable in terms of historical events or times and things like that, that if you don't present that within a proper context, it's actually often more of a weird valley of weirdness, you know, like a what's the word, the uncanny valley, between which jars you more than the actual ghosts and things, you know. Sorry, go on.
But here's my to be honest, but I feel like I think the character of Sherlock Holmes has been unto of all these different shows as well. So like try something different
That's what I
because
thought they
there's
were doing, though.
yeah,
You fell into that trap.
Yeah, probably.
Because there's far too many Sherlock Holmes shows now. Did you even get that? Did you even get that shit show Women and Terry as well that passes itself off as Sherlock Holmes
Oh yeah, female
Watson?
Watson.
Well, you
Oh,
had that also recently, that film with that Millie Bobby Brown playing Sherlock Holmes'
Yeah,
sister in that Netflix film, and it just seems to me they're too afraid to just do a traditional Sherlock Holmes. I would love to see like the 80s Sherlock Holmes series that the BBC used to do, and do something like that. Do Sherlock Holmes back in his original setting. um, keep it close to the books. That's what people really
yeah,
want.
yeah, and I think it's
yeah,
been such a long time now since we've had Victorian pure homes that it would actually be fresh again, because we've
Exactly.
had so many different. Oh, it's modern day with the Benedict Cumberbatch one, with now this where
yeah,
it's like they're the background of the
Yeah, but
show
this is the
basically.
postmodernist deconstruction. This is what they do. This is
yeah,
postmodern filmmaking. It's not entrenched in traditional values or traditional characterizations, keeping it close to the
yeah,
source material. It's all about how can we deconstruct this and turn it into something else. People are getting
yeah,
a bit fed up with it because it's become so commonplace and so
yeah,
banal, and I'll roll the eyes. Oh, here we go again. They're going to reimagine, and it's just so tedious. And then we see it in everything now, and we see it rolling out before our eyes with Doctor Who and Star Wars and Star Trek, and
yeah,
it just doesn't seem to
Yeah.
end. And we want for diversity's sake, we want
yeah,
diversity of quality. We want not the same thing deconstructed constantly, shoved in our face and say, here it is, it's new. No, it isn't, you lying piece of shit. It's fucking old stuff. Why don't you do it like they did back in the old days? But do it better. We've got better technology. You can make it look really lavish and fantastic, but you're too busy deconstructing the characters and turning into something that they are not. And it's
yeah,
fine once in a while, do that by all means, but constantly now.
yeah.
And it's all because of these quotas and equal opportunities nonsense, ticking boxes and quotas.
And you
Chuck
get,
that shit out the window.
yeah, and I posted a comment, obviously, in the chat last night over at Oxfam stream. I was originally saying to myself that this trend would only last for 5 years tops, but boy, was I wrong with that. I mean, look at how many franchises now that have been on to the ground.
Yeah.
It's hard to weigh if and if um and if people don't start to put even more pressure on these entertainment companies, every single franchise will just open and open smoke, and if they touch still and if they touch still um and if they touch still or does their things
Oh,
movies,
that's so next.
that's
That is
yeah,
so next.
as they touch the Charlotte, seriously, because those three movies are my favourite. Would you if they touch if these crazy people touch that, I'm basically on.
Yeah, but it's not
Well,
by
but-
accident, is it?
No.
Yeah.
These things. I mean, we see such a pattern. It's absolutely undeniable. This is an organized, concerted effort by. I mean, it's transatlantic. You know, we see it in Hollywood, we see it at the BBC. It's everywhere, right? They've been infiltrated by these activists who have been educated on this post-Marxist, postmodern ideology, and they're going to break everything down, destroy Western culture, and replace it with something grey, NPC, boring, dull, preachy, and all this forced diversity. But the real, where I think it really stems, and why I think it can't change, or at least it can't change at the moment, is because the people at the top are compromised. They're compromised. They've got shit on them that you wouldn't believe, probably, and they are being blackmailed. It's the only logical conclusion I think anyone can come to as to why these franchises and these big studios are wasting shitloads of millions of dollars and pounds on things that do not sell. The only reason I can think of that serves any fucking logic to any of this is that there is something going on that we are not privy to, that people at the top are heavily compromised, and therefore they are willing to throw their own companies under the bus in order to keep a lid on it.
Yeah, but the problem is with that little logic that you just spoke about. We've sort of said this is. We noticed it around 2006, 2007. Like noticeably, it might have been starting before that. So they've now had at least 5 years of doing this. They need to start now creating new stuff to replace the thing they're destroying.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the thing, though.
2 or 3 more years of destroying. They need to now have their
how do you do it?
Replacements. And
how do you do it if you've got people at the top who are compromised? Let's just say that that's true. I'm not saying it is, but that's what I intrinsically believe. How do you remove a cornered ferret from the top of a corporation when they are deeply compromised, and if they step out of line in any way, shape, or form, that's it, they're in jail? Because the Me Too movement certainly, it was certainly around then all this change started to happen. It seems very, very coincidental otherwise for all this stuff to be going on, and all these multinational, multi-billionaire companies, these top index 500 whatever companies are willing to lose literally millions and millions of dollars.
But it's like I said, their plan's not working, not in the long run. And this is what I think is why sometimes I'm a bit of a daft optimist. Like, look at Star Wars right now. Like, you can tell that they're now in that sort of second phase of trying to put their version out with the High Republic stuff. That is blatantly them saying, right, we burnt all the original stuff, we burnt down all the stuff that you love, here's our version. And it's not selling, apparently, or people who are in that fandom, who are in the know, are saying this is not shifting.
Well, that's because they've been placed in, all these people with no talent, like literally zero talent, are worming their way in because they've got leverage over the people in charge. It's the only way that could happen.
And the new Indiana Jones movie will be exact the same, because these people don't take a responsibility for their own actions. They just double down, and if that website Kathleen Kennedy, you can already tell that this you can already say that you can already kind of tell that Indiana Jones will be next to be destroyed, because if she has any say over that, which it looks as though she is, it's going to be a total disaster and propaganda. I'm sorry for being negative, but you see where it's going.
The problem is with Indiana Jones, like James Bond, they are both traditionally, they are masculinity. they are sex appeal. I'll say this as a female. In that first movie, and obviously Colburn would probably agree with me as well. Like, is it the first movie where that scene where he's like in the bed and he's like smoking, and it's just such like you wouldn't have that nowadays.
No.
Because
No,
it's such like it's such a and I'm gonna say it's a sexy moment with him because he's still quite young in those movies. Harrison Ford is a very good looking guy. And you can tell they did that on purpose with that scene of like it looks like he's literally posing almost from my memory. I've not seen Raiders in a long time, but he's literally like hasn't got a shirt on, he's in bed, he's having a smoke, and it's just like, that's pure sex appeal.
Because Hollywood understood then, as it still understands now, but willfully negates it, because sex sells. Sex sells. Sex always sells. Good-looking people sell stuff. What these crazy activists are doing is, since the Me Too movement, is that sex is now off the table, and now we must make everything frumpy, dour, so everyone's represented, all body types, all this kind of identity politics shoved in. So all this, you can't body shame, you can't fat shame, you can't this shame, you can't that shame, and it's removed all veneer, all gloss. I mean, Hollywood was the seed of its own destruction in the first place with all the Me Too stuff anyway. So that certainly sowed the seeds of their demise. And what we're seeing is the throes of that demise and the birth, really, or the aborted birth of postmodernist, ugly culture where everything is ugly, everything is dour, everything is grey, everything's depressing, because that's what they want the world to be. They want it to be representative of everybody, but not anyone wants this. It's these crazy people who have untold levels of depression and identity issues and all the rest of it, dictating to the rest of us how everything should be, how everything should, and it's ugly because they themselves are ugly on the inside, and they want everyone else to suffer what they're suffering, and it's not. That's not fair. You can't project your failures in your life on the rest of society and say, well, it's their fault, so they must change. No, doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and it's basic human nature. That's where that whole sex sells comes from. It's
when you go looking for a partner, do you go looking for like the frumpiest, dourest, malest, vaginaist kind of, thing? No, you don't. You don't really. It's whatever sort of comes to you naturally. Instinctively, hormonally. It's charged with sex. That's what it is. That's.
And I would
we are
argue,
animals. Remember.
I would argue that's even more true in fantasy, where you know that that's not a real character, but you are just living the experience. So if they happen to be good looking, if they happen to have a bit of charm about them, and obviously this goes for any gender, anything, it doesn't matter. And
can you imagine cinema in the 1920s and 30s being as big as it was, as big as an explosion with all the Hollywood sirens and all the rest of this, the black and white golden age of cinema? Can you imagine it being? I don't think cinema would have taken off if they just got frumpy people.
Jesus
ugly, fucking. Do you want to touch my woman's penis? I don't think it would have been as big of a boon as cinema was, because who the fuck would have wanted to have seen that? Because you want escapism, you want to be taken away, you want to lust after the film start, you want to imagine yourself in this. That's where you self-insert, right? You don't need representation of you on the screen. You want representation of your fantasy on screen.
It's like
they flipped the script and made it about themselves. This kind of narcissistic need for self representation and affirmation constantly, and that's not healthy, I don't think.
It's like it's not a coincidence that the most successful Doctor of the modern run is David Tennant. Like there's not a coincidence there. That
and
he was
undeniable.
Handsome. He was that what we were exactly talking about, especially coming off Eccleston, who, let's be honest, he's not a bad-looking chap, but he's not like traditional handsome, as I would put it. That's what Tennant was.
Tennant wasn't one of my favourites, but I could appreciate looking at him. I remember seeing him before in Casanova and go, oh, who's that?
I just
and
say,
sort of obsessing about it.
Today's show's brought by Problem Being and his sound effects.
Yeah. I think he is a very, very sexy, good-looking guy, and I think there is nothing wrong with that. And I think, well, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? I mean, I'll be very interested to see if just for the rubbernecking more than actually giving a shit anymore, but who the 14th Doctor is going to be. Will they go for an attractive person or not? That's going to be interesting. Yeah, go on.
I think it's somebody from Line of Duty, but not that Scottish actress.
Oh.
And Charlotte's actually giving me her theory of Jereen. She said one of the major characters or something like that going through a story that could be an exit storyline. Am I right in saying that, Charlotte? Because it's like a good fiction story that this particular character is going through.
Yeah, well, with Line of Duty, it's very much they like to set something up maybe like in one series and then they'll pick it up the next series. It's sort of, it likes to do into like connecting storylines. And like 2 series ago, one of the main characters had this really bad accident, and now because of the pain he's taking prescription drugs, but he's taken way too many. So and the theme of this series of Line of Duty is very much everybody being pushed to their absolute limits. So it sort of has this feeling about it, this series, that we could lose a big character.
You've basically said who it is, because obviously that character can be recognised by that description. Might as well just tell us who you think it is.
But here's the problem. He's a white male, so that gives it a big knock for no. But
right. Well, come on, let's have it. I need to look it up because I probably won't know that.
Oh, you probably know Martin Compston. I always say the surname a bit wrong, but
Compston.
And also, the age of him would work. The age of him would work. He's not too young. He's not too old. He's coming from a big hit show, and I think if they can't get a big ticket actor, they'll probably look for somebody from a big show.
He's
got a gorgeous wife, isn't he?
Oh yeah.
And he's a fellow.
Not another Scot.
No, but he can do an English accent. He's another Tennant. He can do English accent.
Well, he probably won't do.
And also, he's a Celtic fan as well.
Well, there you are. It's a shoe-in. It's a conspiracy. Daniel's got in there and said, "Oi, BBC, if you don't do this, I kick your ass," and that's it.
Well, yeah. Well, when that rumor popped up about the Scottish actress, I can't think of her name. I was like, it seems a bit random, her name being mentioned. And then a few people who were in the know, who we know, basically said on like Twitter and stuff like that, "Oh, this is broken telephone," was the phrase. That it's there's a potential somebody from Line of Duty gonna be 14, but it's not her.
Right. So, yeah. I mean, like, I'm just looking.
Something or nothing.
I can't see it, but again, anything would be better than what we have.
Oh yes, definitely.
I mean, the the facial hair will probably have to go. But I don't know. He might look a bit
He's
like a
only
shaved
recently
potato. I don't know.
started to. Oh yeah, no, I think he looks a bit better with it. But we'll have to see, because I do think because that's, and we've sort of said this in other streams. Whatever they pick, they're not going to please everybody.
Yeah,
So it's just how
Well, no.
much. How
Well, I
much
think
are they willing to?
they would please. Yeah, I think they will please more people if they went to a traditional doctor actor. Someone who's pale, stale, and male. I don't have a problem with that. That's been consistent with the character for over 50 odd years. I just feel all of this retconning was done purely aesthetically in order to appease the postmodern crowd, the extreme left, and to thrust this diverse doctor on us out the blue. Oh no, the doctor wasn't this white man you've known for the last 50 odd years. They were in fact a little black girl, then a little Asian girl, and then another Asian girl, and then there's a black boy, and now look, there's a token white kid there with the blonde hair, and then there's and then another black child, and it's just like, and then Ruth, obviously, and I mean, it's so obvious the way it's falling over itself to virtue signal this, and it was done without a fucking single word from any of these people portraying that timeless child. And to me, that smacks of sheer notice me, look at me, give me a pat on the back, aren't I great? And it was just so cringe. I mean, if you were going to do something like that, do it properly, not in a 2-minute fucking montage without any voiceover, well, apart from the voice, without a single word uttered by a single one of them. And I think that undermines their principle. I think it's shallow. I think it's vapid, vacuous, and cynical, because it did nothing for improving race relations or diversity inclusion or any of that. And they probably only allowed the white kid in there because maybe he was bisexual or trans or something. I don't know. So I mean,
but it's worse than that, because I think some of the so-called progressive fans are noticing now. Their first, I don't know what, basically Ruth. That should have been a fully fledged doctor. That should not have been a cameo because of the relevance of that actress. I'll put it that way.
If they would have started off with her, with the Ruth doctor instead of what we had, I don't think we would have had half the issues we have now, apart from the obvious, like the fucking awful writing and direction. But I think as a portrayal of the character, she was a lot closer to Whittaker. She certainly pulled off the austere, authoritarian kind of, almost Edwardian feel about her. But again, for me, I still think that even that, I mean, the fact that how they used her to insert her in was divisive. Like, I think
if you think about what, for some parts of the fandom, she would have represented. That was, if you think about this really, like, they've been given a one-off sort of weird, she's not part of the normal lineup doctor.
And I think it's shocking that, the current era fans, such as they are why they're not up in arms about how she was treated and used in this way. I mean, how tokenistic can you look? I mean, that is the definition of being tokenized, fetishized for their own self-gratification, to show how progressive they are. Look at us, aren't we wonderful? Whilst throwing her under the bus, really. And I think I would have been much happier if she'd had been the 13th Doctor, much more so than Jodie Whittaker, the white female feminist savior of everybody. But even so, I still believe fundamentally, I'm with Gary from Nerd Roger
Yeah,
Corner.
I'm the
The Doctor is a male character.
Same.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
energy
same.
is male. He's been male for over 50 odd years, or in terms of canon, over how many 2,000 years or whatever now. And it just, and then just to kind of fall over yourself to just throw out canon, destroy canon, just in order to fit this in.
Yeah.
That goes to show how little they care about the show, how much more they care about appearing to be virtuous for backslaps and woke points than they are about the character and the show itself. I think that is so. That's why the fans are up in arms. That and the terrible writing, obviously, but it's those things in combination, which because we can sniff out. I think not so much your generation, I'm sorry, but my generation X, we grew up very cynical about things and very critical about things, and we always didn't take everything on face value. We could sniff out bullshit from a very young age because we were called the latchkey generation, right? We had to look after ourselves 90% of the time. So we had to grow up fast.
But see, to be honest with you, like I would argue that, I would argue that because there's so more of a chance of people like obviously our age shall than there is somebody that was born in the 2000 ends, for example, or something like that. I would be being able to call this out because that demographic is what's known as Generations Ed, and if you go back through old X videos, he kind of he kind of breaks all he kind of breaks all that down, but because because you are born in the 90s, you're just associated with being a male. Anyway, Generation Z is what came after males, and I think and I th- and I think that there is so more of a chance of people like us that shall we call them as bullshit out and
and I do think
there's a generation Z.
and I do think sadly it needs to almost be our generation that does it, because you've seen the way certain types of fan, or I don't like saying that term, but you see how some fans, let's just use that term, that if you're at a certain age they just won't listen to you. So I think it needs to be our generation, because we're not seen in their eyes as like this old, they're just everything underneath the sun, we don't listen to them.
I think Gen Z is most likely to be, or if not Gen Z, then Gen Zero, whatever they're going to be called, to come out and reject the previous generation's orthodoxies. I think that's generally what happens over a period of time. Everything sort of goes backwards and forwards and peaks and troughs, right? So I do see that. I have come across Gen Zers on Twitter who are more critical and are more questioning of the orthodoxy of the day, and are a bit intolerant of the intolerance of the woke left, and are a bit more centrist or a bit more critical. And I think that gives me a sense of optimism. I just hope there's enough in numbers to do it, and because they've been raised in a orthodoxy, in a culture where everyone's afraid to speak their fucking mind in case they get cancelled or hounded on Twitter. I mean, that's an awful lot of peer pressure. Peer pressure for me when I was growing up was at school, right? And that was like amongst your friends and amongst the bullies and whoever's in the classroom at the time or in the schoolyard, right? Now it's online in front of millions and millions of people. And I think
Yeah.
that is such that can't be understated, how incredibly intense that must be to grow up, because I can't imagine that, quite honestly. And I find that, God,
But it's even but it's even also it's even also if you're obviously YouTuber or a podcaster, because you get um is YouTubers and broadcasters such as myself and all like Gary from Arctics, and you'll get even more heat and put up on this and on telling us, so it's even us for
yeah. I mean, we
people
had
like us.
we had on Twitter the other day. I discovered that one of the who's from the Not My Doctor crowd,
Yeah,
the ringleader, posted up something criticizing Gary's opinions on Christopher Eccleston, to the
yeah,
point where he was threatening him with physical violence. Again, this is what got him
yeah,
banned 3 times, by the way. Where he said he wanted to body him,
yeah,
right? Because he didn't like his opinion. And made a whole load of sweeping statements about,
yeah,
Gary not washing and reeking and being a sad, lonely, whatever. And it's just like, the guy's
yeah,
married, he's got kids. And, I don't think he looks unwashed to me, just because he's got a beard. I mean,
yeah,
Yeah.
you only need to look at this ringleader, which I'm talking about, and think, well,
yeah.
does that one wash? I think it's projecting some.
Yeah, but the
Um,
problem is we need to just get away from pettiness, don't
well,
we? I think we
exactly,
all
and
need to get
it's
away from it.
vicious. It's vicious, and it's funny because in that very same thread, you got someone else saying, "And we get called the hate group and such," and then they can all f off, and they are all a bunch of c words.
Yeah,
I'm like, well, can you not see the irony of this statement?
yeah,
Who provoked you to say, because you didn't like someone's opinion, which wasn't addressed to you,
yeah,
and there's a group set up, literally just there, set up to take screenshots or other people's tweets, repost them in their group, and just get reams and reams and reams of this group's members tearing them apart and calling them all kinds of names, mocking them every single day. And they don't seem to understand that we don't do that. We don't form these groups. And we just are individuals posting our opinions on Twitter as individuals. They all clump together in one hive mind and sit there and go all day, every day. And then when we call them a hate group, they say, you're bullying! You bully Jodie Whittaker. She's not even on fucking Twitter. How can we be bullying her? She hasn't got social media. Don't be an idiot. She's an actress. We are criticizing her. Of course, there's going to be dickheads out there who are going to say, misogynist things and things, but everything is misogynist to these people now. It's just ridiculous. They can't distinguish.
and like these people, these people kill aim to be all for diversity, but like but then they attack and they attack us and because we have because they even slag off people's conditions and their sexuality, even though they're all for, even though they can to be all that, but if you don't
It's because they're full of
agree,
shit. They're full of shit.
but if you don't agree with their ideology, so all you get any soul or under the sun because you don't adopt the same
Orthodoxy.
ideology as them, yeah.
Yeah, it's an orthodoxy. It is a religion. It is an orthodoxy,
Yeah.
and they are the new Inquisition. And if you don't, if you fail the purity test, you are therefore demonized and are othered and are therefore condemned to hell for the rest of eternity. That's how they think. There is no apologizing, even if you are in the wrong, which we're not. But if we were and we apologized, they would never accept it, and you would still be condemned to hell and eternal fire and damnation for eternity and forever and ever and ever.
It's like with the Eccleston thing, though, because I will admit, because I knew something had been said by him, so I looked for the interview because I know that people can take stuff out of context and they can. So I did look for what he'd actually said, and I will admit this: I was really annoyed and angry when I first saw what he said. And I put like a very angry post on it. But you know what? That was one of the best things I could have done, because by putting that post on a group, a private group, it meant that I had people responding to me. And I saw lots of different views. I saw people say, well, I understand what you're getting from, but I don't quite agree with you. And we had some lovely little debates. And afterwards, I had a think and I go, okay, I'm still not 100% happy with what he said, but I'm not as angry now. But that only happened
and
because
you're still friends with these people.
Oh yeah, but that was the good thing, that I listened to other people.
Because you're an adult.
But that's what's brilliant about debate, and like me and Daniel spoke about it off air, and we have different opinions about the Eccleston interview, but we listened to each other, and it was good because we saw different viewpoints. And I just think we need to get back to doing that.
But these people are not interested in opinions that are outside of their comfort zone. You know, we're talking about these people who operate in a belief system where they are owed a safe space, that they are owed a bubble of reality. And if you dare challenge that comfort zone, you are evil incarnate. They are not interested in talking to you. All they want to do is hector you to death and come at you and berate you, mock you, physically threaten you, even though they would never do it in person because these people are cowards. And I think it's just a sign of their own mental weakness. And I'm sorry, that's a harsh reality, but it is also the truth. And unfortunately for them, they have a lot of growing up to do. They have a lot of world experience. It's going to kick them in the arse, and they're going to have to deal with that. And the fact that they preach about diversity whilst at the same time going after you, Daniel, you have a disability, going after you, Charlotte, you're a woman. They come after me. I'm a gay man. They come after Jade, who is a trans woman. And then you have all these other people who just simply do not agree with their worldview, and they are immediately condemned and othered and put in with the white supremacists and the bigots and the thises and the thatses, and that we're terrible people because they are right, we are wrong, and they will always be there to tell us how wrong we are without even considering for one iota of a second that maybe, just maybe, they might not be right.
But here's the thing, like, you can still have an opinion, but you can maybe go, okay, maybe I think that's what almost they're scared about. That, like, if they listen to too much of a debate, they'll suddenly not have these beliefs.
Well, they've never had a debate in their life. They've always had their own way for their entire life. They've never clearly been told no. And I blame my generation actually for that, because it's the Gen Xers who raised these kids and obviously just told them that they were wonderful. Because in my generation, we had to struggle and fight for every fucking thing. There were no jobs because all the boomers had it and all the rest of it. Okay, so we had a very tough time with it. We were a smaller generation because there were less in numbers. And it was really difficult. And obviously all the mistakes that the boomers did with their excess, we had to clean up after them. And that's not easy. And then obviously for a lot of people in my generation who had kids, which I didn't, but if those did, sport their kids in return because they wanted to give them what they didn't have. So they affirmed them all the time. They told them they were special. They said, you know, you're a winner. You win. Even if they lose it, no, you won. And all these other lies. And because they had struggled, they didn't want their kids to struggle. But what they've done is they've not armed them. We weren't very well equipped. My generation itself was not very well equipped, I don't think. we had a better education system, I believe, than now. We didn't have all this woke shit, you know, this critical theory shoved down our throat. But we had our critical faculties, and we were challenged a lot. But not anymore, they seem.
Well, with that, shall we add to that as means the banking? Thanking God I'm not a student in our school because like even schools drastically different to the education that I got when I was in school. Do you know what I mean? And now we're getting all this karate and again, basically, just go. I don't know. I actually having to go through the education system.
Yeah. Did you have proms?
To be honest.
Did you have proms?
I never had them, and never had them. Oh my God.
I had one, but I don't think it's called a prom. I think we called it something different.
Right, we didn't have that. Right, that wasn't even a thing in this country until like a few years ago.
I did. I did have a trip down to Manchester. Oh, but that bizarre and evils. And that
I don't think they're called prom. I think
Manchester.
I think they call them like leavers dues now. I think that's the term they use.
Yeah, I mean that's American. I mean, like we just didn't have. I mean, PJ maybe says that had a school disco. Yeah, we had like school discos in middle school, but like at high school, didn't have any. It was a boys' school, my school, so I think that would have been really a little bit awkward. And I find it amusing that kids these days can be openly trans or openly gay or whatever at school. If I was openly gay or if anyone was openly trans at my school in the 80s and 90s, they would have been massacred, right? That's how far we've come, guys. Newsflash, things are better now than what they were. So all this kind of, there's homophobia and all this all over the shop and it's all racist. No. Compare it to how things were. Even in my time, I can see with my own eyes how things have changed and have improved grossly, hugely, right? Big, massive difference. There was no chance in hell you could be openly gay at school. No way. Nah. Right? And I roll my eyes and laugh when I hear about, from these kids about how there's this terrible world that they live in. It's just like, geez, I mean, when I was hospitalized from being queer bashed on a train and no one lifted a finger to help me, I think you're over exaggerating. I don't blame them necessarily for believing that. I just think it's just the education system is and the parents and all the rest of it who force this kind of message. This is the terrible world, and this needs change. And it's like, well, you've no idea. You have no idea at all.
Well, the problem is the world's never going to be perfect. There's always going to be these horrible incidences happen to whatever group, to whatever group that is a minority. There's always going to be horrible incidences. But if you look at overall, then a lot of things have changed in law, in just attitudes.
I mean, when I was at 19, I think I was must have been around that time that the law changed from the age of consent for gay men went down from 21 to 18. And I just think how lucky someone like me is growing up today when they can feel that they can identify as a potato and it's accepted,
Yeah.
right? I think things have definitely improved. If you feel you can go out on Twitter, put in your fucking bio, I am a potato. I am a potato spirit, and people will come to you and go, instead of going, you need to be put into a straitjacket immediately. Forget your toothbrush now. Come here. Here's a ball. Here's a ball. Come. They would go, yes. Stunning and brave, darling. Stunning and brave. Oh my God, you're so beautiful. And it's just so it's just so cringe in a way. But I mean, for them to complain about being hated and being victims, and it's just, you can't live like you've never been a fucking victim in your life. Anything that you could claim victimhood on is because of your own stupidity, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to identify as a potato and go up to your average person in the street, they are going to look at you funny. And frankly, I don't blame them. If you're going to make shit up, you have to convince yourself first before you need to convince us. And I don't think it's very convincing. I think it's this kind of need for attention and this need for affirmation and this need for being inclusive by other people, to be included in a group. And this is where the group identity thing comes from, and the individual sacrifices itself for the acceptance of the crowd around them. And it's not an intimate crowd. They're not looking for affirmation from a small group of friends. They're looking for affirmation and inclusivity from everybody, and they want it on demand. They want it now. They want fucking more tomorrow. And if you don't give it to them, there's something horribly wrong with you. And I think that that's a terrible inversion of your own particular psychosis. And I'm not saying everyone's suffering a psychosis, but I'm saying that if you're at the need where you have to force your self-identity on everyone else and make it everyone else's problem, I really object to that. I think that you are not only alienating yourself, you're not helping the wider cause. In fact, you're harming the wider cause. You're setting back LGBT rights 20, 30 years the way that they're going. And I don't want to be one of the, catch-all frail, the things at the end, who gets swept up along with it, because I'll have a mark on my back because of all of this. And I don't blame the wider society for reacting to this. Like, what the fuck is going on? I don't even know. Right? And I've always grown up being very open-minded. I was very much on the left, very inclusive. I lived on a housing cooperative in East London with trans people, gay people, druggies, fucking gangsters, everybody, right? The whole, in a bubble, right? Everybody from all over the world. They were like, fucking, I think when I was on the management committee, there were about at least 60 different languages. There were 500 people living there and 60 different languages spoken there, right? So I came from that, right? So do not tell me I'm a fucking bigot and a racist or a white supremacist or whatever, because I know I am not, and I don't need to justify myself to anybody. I will just simply say that I came from a very, very broad-minded, very open-minded background. But what has happened to me since is that slowly over the last few years, particularly more than anything, the last 5 or so years, has been this erosion of my faith and my trust in my fellow human beings, simply for the matter that I can see that people are gradually losing their fucking minds. And that's on the left mostly. I'm sorry, but it is. And I come from there, and I have, because I come from there, I have to be its hardest critic because it's the most honest criticism, because I'm from there, right? If we can't look at ourselves and criticize ourselves, are you going to wait for the right to do it, or anyone else? Which, left and right is irrelevant nowadays. It's a blur, right? It's gone. That paradigm has gone. We live in a 3-dimensional world. We live on a globe, a ball in space, a hunk of rock floating around the sun. And if we can't think in 3 dimensions instead of the left and right paradigm where we're squabbling amongst each other, left, right, we're just going to march ourselves into the next chambers. right?
Yeah.
And it all ends the same way with all these crazy, fanatic, tyrannical, authoritarian belief systems, which is what this is. This whole identity thing is post-Marxism. It's just Marxism parading around as postmodern. It's wearing a postmodern dress, right?
Yeah.
It all ends the same way, and that's mass graves.
Yeah.
And that's it. So
yeah, because it's all about this dehumanizing.
it is.
And the more certain activists or certain groups start getting a bit of power and a bit more power and a bit more power, you can see them getting cockier and more controlling.
Yeah.
And it's this
You see
idea
the cancel
of,
culture.
yeah. And isn't it funny how now, when people were denying it a couple of years ago, there's no such thing as cancel culture. It's just
They're
a
still denying it.
conspiracy.
They're still denying it.
Yeah, no, but that's why I do think there's little bits where I see it, where it gives me hope, and that is that even people who before would have been the most, like, people advocating, even they're starting to say, no, you're going too far.
And
You
I
are
think
going too far with this. And I do think they will come a time where these groups, they'll get so in their heads they'll be perceived as having power.
We're adults being led by the nose by a bunch of teenagers. I just want that to sink in for a minute. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yeah, and I think, people like get out of them, but with them, I think getting with those people saying that cancel culture doesn't exist because he's been cancelled at least 2 or 3 times now about the and he was about to do some more writing for BBC Oops, and then during the NL Look events, I mean, his episode Unicorn and the Wasp is cancelled again thanks to this minority of people that
and they nearly cancelled.
shit on everything.
And they nearly cancelled what's her face who did the watch-alongs, didn't they? They nearly cancelled her until she bent the knee, and that's one of their own. What chance does the rest of us stand? And the thing is, like, they don't call it cancel culture. So first of all, it didn't exist. Then it does exist, but it's actually called consequence culture, right? And apparently,
oh, wow, is that what they call it?
Yeah, consequence culture. And my response to that is bullshit. Consequence for what? And by whom? And by whom, we know it's not by individuals, it's by mob rule, right? Mob rule, mob culture. Pitchforks, torches, the lot, virtually. And basically, that's it. They dictate, they hive-mindedly agree, because if you notice, they all use the same terminology, the same words, the same phrases, all from the postmodern dictionary. Problematic, and all these, all these made-up buzzwords that they glean from their crazy fucking professors at university, which is the hive of shite. And and they repeat it parrot fashion because they haven't actually critically thought about it, which is ironic considering that they learn it from critical theory.
I know, if something was ever misnamed.
Well, I think it's a clever misnaming, because it's not critical in the sense of using critical thinking. It's critical in the terms of we're going to criticize.
That makes sense.
Right? There it is. And that is the dishonesty and the disingenuity of postmodernist philosophy, because they would use words and change the meaning or use double meanings. So, I mean, if you look at my name, for example, problembeing, it has 3 different meanings, right? But that's an example of how you can mislead someone into changing the definition in any one of 3 ways there. You see what I mean? So by using things like critical theory, people will assume it means they're being critical of using their faculties and thinking about
like
things.
intelligence is implied, but not actually.
So being critical, you're receiving information, you're turning it over in your head, and then you're espousing some kind of resolution to it. Yeah. But in reality, the meaning is critical, as in you will be critical of history, of the Enlightenment, of this, that, and the other, and you will deconstruct everything and put it back in a different way that we tell you to. Right? So that's the critical, is to criticize, not to be critical and think about it. It's just to immediately criticize and turn it around and throw it back out. And to tear things down, basically. That's what deconstructing is. You tear things down, and then you rebuild it in the image that you want it to be built.
Yeah, because if we go back to our history, in a certain time period, in a certain country, I won't say any of the obvious terms because of YouTube, but if you look at, that took years to change a mindset. That a whole group of people, just for being part of a group, we got to a point that a whole population thought it's okay for them to be wiped out. Because
that's what we learned from history. And that's why Gina Carano was absolutely correct in posting what she did about this warning from history. Speaking as someone who is from the tribe, that if you don't have that warning, it's what, all these people would have died for nothing if we don't learn from it. And if we start seeing patterns that are similar, we see like the online cancel culture, which is very much similar to the book burning of the 1930s, and this othering of certain groups of people, which at the moment is white conservatives, especially males, straight males, and that because of if you think about it on the global scale, white Europeans are not the majority, right? They are gradually intermarrying, which is fine, which is great, which is wonderful and should be celebrated, even though now that's considered racist. But the numbers of replacement within white European nations or countries or cultures is not as much as all the other races. So eventually they're going to sort of disappear. And this is absolutely loved by these people. And I think that's a shame. And I think if you're going to erase the culture, it's like we'll never have existed. And that's what they want. Yeah, and I find that terrifying, that you're willing to sacrifice history and to demonize people to get there quicker. It's really weird.
That's what's so scary to me, because I'm not a history expert, but there's certain stuff I do like to look to. And my dissertation was a really long title, but it basically was about that time in history. Because I've always thought, like, how do you get from point A to B in that time? Because I've always said our natural instincts isn't to hate. It's not to want to hurt people. So how do you condition people? How do you convince?
Well, you tell them when they're young that they were born racist and that they must hate themselves. Yeah, that's how you get them from a young age.
That's the version now. But in that part of if you think about it, in that part of history, they didn't do that. They had to just, with one party coming in, had to replace basically a thought process. So that's why I did my dissertation on it.
Yeah, but I don't think it's any different. I think it's pretty much the same. It's propaganda, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's if you look at what they did, they used propaganda, and it was all the because it was the insidious nature of it. And that's what I see more than anything now. That same insidious, it's sort of hiding, it's tricking people, it's trying to use...
Any ideology that uses coercion, threat, shaming, struggle sessions, online counselling, and all the rest of it. If you're so virtuous and so right, and everything you're saying is so true, then why do you have to rely on using lies, propaganda, coercion, threat, shaming, struggle sessions to get your point across? Surely, And if you've got people within those minority groups that you claim to defend who are saying we don't agree with you, how comes then they get called all these racist and sexist and all the rest of it terms? I mean, women who don't, conservative white women or conservative black women are called bitches. Black people are called Uncle Toms, and coons and things like horrible terms. I'm sorry if I demonetize you, but I think
I'm not actually monetized yet. So go
you never will. No.
Go ahead.
But these are the terms that they are using themselves. And another, just one more point, and then I'll shut up. When you look at people's when you look at people's profiles on Twitter and you see them labeling all their mental health problems, their pronouns, what groups they belong to, what political activism they support, are they doing that to show their true authentic self as they claim, or is it to say you can't touch me because if you do, they will come after you, and I will virtue signal this because I don't want to be ripped to pieces either, and I will use this as a shield as well as a sword. And by identifying the way that I do, I immediately have layers and layers and layers of online protection that is far superior to yours, and I can say and do whatever the hell I want because I know I am empowered now by this, because it's this artificial situation that's been created gives them not only armor but weaponry, and that is where the insidiousness of it lies, because it's almost like it's become an unwritten law that these people now have more power than anyone else, and that is terrifying.
And I was just actually going to.
You can't be challenged.
I was just actually going to say, Master Anson, the echo situation, just to clarify for any idiots out there that are actually that are actually tuning into this. Now I'm going to say it as slowly as I can for you morons. Right, the initial thing I wanted said annoyed me originally, right, but then I thought to myself, then I thought to myself, cannon's already been destroyed anyway, so like it kind of makes what he said as redundant, right? Because it's all already destroyed anyway, thanks to the brilliant showrunner that we have currently.
Brilliant.
But that's actually that's actually a casting for you morons, because you don't understand anything apart from cancel culture.
Isn't it funny?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'll let you finish. Sorry.
And also as like I said in the original post on my Twitter account, I said I still I'll give a review of his odd tale series that's come out it's coming out pretty soon as well, and I'll give a fair and honest and I'll give a fair and honest review. That so if any of you morons will say, oh, you were bullying for Eccleston, come back to this stream and you'll actually see my points that have been done this, but carry on, Pan. I'm sorry, I just had to
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. You don't owe anyone an explanation, which is a hard lesson to these people because they're
Yeah.
so used to getting their own way and demanding
Yeah.
people answer for their terrible crimes of having independent thought and
Yeah.
expressing it, whether they like it or not. That's real life. Deal with it. And I find it absolutely hysterical that, like, 2 weeks ago, these very same people were absolutely moaning and complaining that no one was complaining about Christopher Eccleston saying about destruction of canon, when we've been going after people like Ben Cook and what's his face who wrote the
Cornell.
Cornell, who went on about destroying canon. And then isn't it fun, especially about Jodie Whittaker? Jodie Whittaker said something, they go after her, but when a white man like Christopher Eccleston says it, no one says anything. So when we do actually because I didn't fucking know about it really anyway until I saw what he had actually said. And then when people started going, well, hold on a minute, he said this, and we started criticizing it, boom, they were not happy that we were criticizing him. So it's like, well, you can't fucking win. Like, 1 minute you're complaining that no one's complaining about it, and then when we do complain about it, you're complaining that we're complaining about it. What the fuck do you want?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was my experience about kick. Oh, because I didn't even attack him there. So all I said was in the original post, because obviously we saw which I said it did annoy me originally, but I still intend to listen to his like finish series, and it comes out um and it comes out on audio and it comes out on audio and and I intend to give a fair and honest intend to give a fair and honest review was on details now. I mean, never attacked the guy person.
Yeah, for you, that was
Personally.
calm. For
Yeah.
you even said to me as a joke, you said, that's probably one of the most neutral, like, least angry things I've ever said on Twitter.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, it probably is, mate. Because
Yeah.
you didn't, like, call him a name, you didn't rant at him, you just said, I'm not happy, but I'm going to be an adult, and I'm going to separate the artist from the art. And
I was just going to say that. I was just going to say, they start throwing around accusations that we're trying to cancel him. No, that is not the case. We're not calling for him to be fired from Big Finish. If anything, we've been asking and wanting the same as everyone else for him to come back to Doctor Who and do an appearance. That's because we care about the show and that we can put aside his personal beliefs because we're adults. And this is, again, another example of their projection on us for the very things that they do themselves. And it's like, no, we're not trying to cancel him. I am going to listen to Christopher Eccleston's audio when they get released because I'm interested to hear it too. And I will be like Daniel, very fair-minded and looking forward to hearing. I mean, I'm not as crazy excited about it because he has pissed me off.
I tell you,
but so what? I'll still listen to it. Sorry.
I'll tell you what things. Who can be my guest of honor and that would be you and of the use those audios together as they come out because because I think Charles will hang fire till
I'm hanging fire a bit.
Won't come out. So like if you would like to be my host and the audios come out and you'll review them together on this channel, because I do actually prefer having guests on, to be honest, because I love the acts of my I said, well, so yeah, if you were
Why do you
doing,
think he's got me on, folks?
so yeah, if you, um, so if you would like to come on, to come on, put up program on the review,
Well, God
with,
willing, if I'm still around, of course I'll be there.
deals let let me know, but as well, to be honest with you, and I know that you're not a big fan of the episode of the doctors, or, for
I
example,
hated it. Yeah, sorry.
but yeah, but like Andrew, I liked it partly because partly because that's how you do a political message within a doctor whose story. You don't batter people over the head with it like it's a hammer, basically
Well,
what you
I
do.
thought it was a bit hammery, to be honest, but hammery and hammy. But I can
Yeah,
appreciate your opinion on
yeah,
it, and I
yeah.
disagree, but that's fine.
I
But
think the only time for me it got a little bit like you could tell it was when he was screaming about I'm going to be the man who didn't, and I just think I don't know, maybe a bit of it is Tennant's a bit overacting. Maybe a little,
I
maybe
was
just a
more.
little.
I was more about the Mary Sue daughter. You know, she came out absolutely fucking perfect. Could do all these backflips and all this amazing soldier, amazing pilot, amazing. You know, it's just like best as ever. And I think that's really the start of where we start seeing all this stuff coming in.
but to be
Oh,
but
here we
yeah,
go.
but to be fair, I enjoyed the back for
I
it's
Because
just
you fancied her.
what number, Daniel?
yeah.
Daniel, what number is she on the list now?
I'll get back to you in that
Yeah,
regard.
I was gonna say this list is growing.
I'll get back to you and I'll let you know.
Like you take the mick out of me. Like I can fancy McGann, but you have a list. It's like there's a difference.
Oh, can I just say, McGann in with? Have you seen With Nerl and I?
No, I need to. There's so much classic stuff that because I'm now like on streams with you lot, I get told so many
Okay,
classic things.
seriously, if you get With Nerl and I and you watch it, just get a mop. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I fancy him when he's like this age now. So early young McGann, I probably won't be able to cope. I'm gonna be honest.
Oh my god, he was
And I've just
gorgeous,
realised
gorgeous, gorgeous.
if anybody new is on this stream, I don't fancy everybody. And I know I've spoke about like sex appeal and Indiana Jones and McGann in one stream.
Yeah.
Yeah, like not just this stream.
We believe you. Millions wouldn't. Yeah. Well, at least Daniel's open about it. There's nothing wrong with it, though. That's the problem, you know.
I know. Just
This
saying.
is, yeah, I know.
And yeah, but Charles gets kind of used to this because you should hear what I'm like when I talk to um when I talk to Charlotte off streaming constantly like this is well I'm sure I want to be honest.
Oh, why do you think I'm like on streams with a load of lads? I'm like to try and neutralise it and to try.
It was like toxic
Yeah.
testosterone. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
But yeah,
Attack.
but yeah, another reason why I enjoy this story is because it shows you, the purpose of a companion and what the companions are there to do. I mean, the three companions that had in the Chernobyl era have been utterly hopeless.
Graham was
So,
sort of
like,
alright, and then the actor gave up, and the writers gave up. because I still will attest, Graham was like the only little bits that I enjoyed when I was still watching it.
I think Davison, you know, I mean, happy birthday to Peter Davison
Yes,
for his
happy birthday,
70th,
Peter
of course. Should have led with that really, but yeah, I tried to start a little campaign to get everyone to drop him a happy birthday on his Twitter page to see if we can't coax him back, you know, just, you know. And it's the same. I found the person we were talking about earlier from that nut crew were posting on their thing about happy birthday Peter Davison. It's like, yeah, but you fuckers were the reason why he left. Right? Let's not beat about the bush. You're a bunch of fucking hypocrites. You whine at us about how we treat Christopher Eccleston, who isn't on social media, and then you were the ones, or your ilk were the ones that went after Peter Davison, who was on social media, and he left. Right, and thanks to you also as well. We don't have any more watch-alongs because you lost your shit and cancelled it. Well done, you. So these people are wishing him a happy birthday, which I find just absolutely stupid and quite frankly bad taste. But I think he was right. You know, the Doctor is a male role model, and you've got Whittaker coming along and saying, well, I could be a role model to boys too. No, it's a different thing. When boys see you, Jodie Whittaker, they think she's like a mum, you know, and trying to be down with the kids, and it's embarrassing to them. They don't want to go to their mates at school and go, oh, you know, Jodie Whittaker. I mean, they'll just be beaten up. You know, it's like when I was at school. You know, we had Sylvester McCoy, and I went to school. A school fete dressed as Sylvester McCoy's Doctor, and I got whooped for it. But I didn't care because I was not going to be deterred. Anyway,
yeah, but to be fair, I think the most funny out of those things not posted was the Chibnall stuff. Like that was just another level of delusion.
Yeah.
Like it was just like a Doctor for divided times.
Yeah,
and I sort of
you are the divided times, you piece of shit.
Well, no, but it's like I said on the stream. I said so you clicked that the fandom wasn't in the best of places when you came to it. So then why have you written one of the most sociopathic,
divisive,
one of the least
idiotic,
caring incarnations we've probably ever had? And
I don't give a shit about your cancer. I got my own problems. I'm going to go over here now and be socially fucking awkward, you cunt. I mean, it's like basically that's the subtext there, you know.
So if you click that, Chris, you should have written her with like actual compassion or incarnation.
I'm going to sacrifice myself to save humanity that I've already killed, and then oh no, here comes a white guy. He's going to do it for me. I'm going to run away now. And oh look, I've taken the entire fucking surviving humanity back to the fucking 21st century in a fucking council house in the middle of Sheffield, and they're going to somehow survive. I mean, what idiotic writing is that? I mean, oh look, Gallifrey's destroyed by the Master. How? Nah. Okay. What?
Yes, JT, that is very true.
Now
what's my love saying, Chip?
Now there's a pretty good impersonation of the accent.
No, I can't do that, and I'm an older.
Yeah. So that is a pretty good impersonation. And speaking of impersonations, do you know when in that era during the Adventures fan audios?
No,
because I'm desperate to actually review that novel, so you star in it.
I'm going to be in a Black Glove Studios fan audio drama of the Sarah Jane Adventures. I don't think it's much of a secret. I'm playing the trickster. Typecast again.
Villain again.
Yeah.
Hopefully you all do that justice, because there's no.
Daniel will kill you.
And because there's no by now that there's no by now how much that show actually means to me, because I can't go a full stream without Similar to you, well, week 7, but we did get us from that, and you know, and that'll be out on YouTube, because I can desperate to give it a try, and obviously we talk about it
I
on the channel.
believe from what I've been told, they've got one release and another release to do first. But I believe the first episode of the Battle of Bannerman Road will be due in June.
Yeah.
I think that's what I was told. June.
Yeah.
Hello, Noel.
I know. Have you
and
just
then
broken up, Noel?
yeah, probably. Listen, I couldn't sleep last night. I managed to get about an hour's skip, power an hour. I'm surprised I didn't just miss this entirely, quite honestly. But yeah, so I've got that's coming out. I'm also I've auditioned for another fan audio drama unrelated to Black Love, but I've been asked to play Omega.
Oh yeah.
So that's potentially good.
Yeah, and I mean, send me the details on that, and I'll get you on to and I'll get you on to promote that on to and we can discuss it.
Yeah, I hope that. God willing, everything works out. And also, I've approached Black Glove again because I saw that they were doing a new production and they're going to send me the script very soon, hopefully, because it's just being finished now. Because I'm going to go for the part of John Merrick in The Elephant Man. So hopefully I'll if I audition for that and I get it, that will be another one, because I'd love to play that character. I absolutely love, have affinity with John Merrick, and I love the film. John Hurt's portrayal of John Merrick was phenomenal, and I read the script of the film very recently, and I was in floods of tears reading it out to myself. And that's funny because the other night, I had a dream. I was having this conversation with this very softly spoken man, and it was so real. And I looked at it, and I could see his skull, and his skull was that of John Merrick's. And I realized I was talking to the Elephant Man, and it woke me up. It was really empowering, like just a beautiful conversation, and it was just so real, and it was just so bizarre, because I mean this was a few days after I'd read the script, so obviously it was somewhere in my subconscious. It felt so real.
Well, you've obviously connected so much with that character.
Yeah, it's a horrific story, the abuse that he suffered, but also the amount of love that he also received, but also how he was unsure of how to deal with that, and it was this kind of fragile hope that he had, and his faith. I mean, I'm not a religious person, but his faith was so important to him, and he was building this model of this church, and just the whole. It's so such a beautiful story and such a tragic story. But the character I mean, we have to bear in mind this was a real human being. That existed and had this horrendous, upbringing and social pariah status for accident of birth, that he was born deformed by his these terrible tumors. And it's so heartbreaking, but he's such an endlessly fascinating character, and you could see so much beauty in him.
It's isn't it? It's not strange. I don't think of the right word for it. Like the people who have had the most hurt or have had the most horrible situations, it tends to turn them into the most beautiful souls.
It's like a puppy who gets, kicked about by, crazy teenagers, and then, they get rescued and they get rehomed, and they often become the most trusting and the most loving. Very nervous, but they're just craving, love and attention, and to
I
be
can remember
accepted.
once at school we had somebody come in to speak to us who had been in the Polish camps where not very nice things happen. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And he came into school and just to listen to him speak about being there and how, and he sort of said it's you got used to death, you got used to losing people, you sort of had to, and you sort of, and that's what he was saying. He goes, it was like the other group didn't have to go back to that theme of dehumanizing. You did it to survive to yourself. And he was talking, but you could just tell but then that's the thing that I remember got to me listening to it, because you'd think that would make him then hate humanity, like absolutely think it's the worst thing that could happen ever. But he said no, when you came out, because I actually felt sorry for the people who had done this to him. And I just think that's amazing. And everybody who afterwards, like the teachers and all, we were all saying, like, only somebody's gone through that atrocity could come out to almost be like the most ultimate believer in humanity. And it's just such and it sounds like similar with this story. It just, you'd think it would turn somebody cynical and horrible, but it doesn't.
Well, I think that also speaks to people's faith, and I have a tremendous respect and admiration for people who find so much strength from their faith. And I think a lot of particularly Jewish people in that time held on to that in the face of such demonic activity that was being done to them en masse in an industrial scale. I mean, I can't imagine. And when I hear terms like Yahtzee and bigot and white supremacist, all this levied at me, and I think back to how my mother broke down in tears telling me about her family's struggles, how her parents and her uncle were literally the last surviving members of her family who survived Auschwitz. And these arseholes on Twitter bandy terms around like white supremacists and Nazis and things like that at people like me, you, and people in general who just regular fucking people, okay? It's not only incredibly soul-achingly painful. I mean, I don't let on, but it upsets me because I won't let them win. But it really it makes me so angry, really emotionally very angry. But I will never show that to them. I will lecture them back and tell them why that's ridiculous and stupid and wrong. I don't need to deny it because I know it's not true. I have nothing to prove to these people. They are nothing to me. And I just really wish and hope better for them, that they can shake themselves out of this stupor that they are in, this intellectual bankruptcy that they've been raised with as their education or lack thereof, and that they find something better and more meaningful in their lives than their own navel-gazing narcissism and projected aggression, frankly.
I was actually listening to your Janet Jackson cover, and I have to say, and I have to say, it's actually pretty damn good.
I haven't listened to this yet.
She's not a fan. She's not a fan.
Should actually listen to his cover. It's just he's sort of catchy up to date sort of version of that
Well,
song.
Cheryl thought it was Prince. Noel's telling me.
Yeah.
So I guess, listen, I'll take that compliment. The
yeah,
guy is amazing. He died on my birthday, which is unfortunate. But I love Prince. I mean, growing up as a teenager, I loved Michael Jackson, Janet Jackson. Saw them in concert many times. I mean, it's not the kind of music I listen to now. I mean, I still appreciate it for retro reasons and just heyday stuff. I'm much more into I mean, I've got a very diverse taste in music, and I hope the music that I make kind of reflects that in a way. And but I'll still be forever known for the fucking scissoring Ocean Man.
Oh, come on. That's gonna follow you to your grave.
I know, right?
Now,
You do all this music throughout your entire life, which no one ever fucking gets to hear, and then you get this one thing, and it's like, But I mean, I think it's hilarious anyway.
I mean, but see, Sancho, that show from the very though. You snap me novel. I think novel. I think that every day, Sancho, bro. He's
not lying. He's not lying.
You paid for it, right? You paid for it. Cheapskate! I want you to buy it. I need your money.
Come on, he's Scottish. You can't hold that against him.
Oh, that's true. I forget. It's my bigotry, you see, my anti-Scottishness. I'm so racist against the Scots. Yeah. Well, that's because I don't have any Scottish blood in me. I've got Welsh, Irish, English, German, Hungarian, French,
got some Scottish
Jewish,
in you.
Italian.
You've got like everything else.
I don't know. I do not know. Just a different kind of Celt, I guess. I don't know. That's just the way it is. But still Celtic. I mean, like, look, we're all fucking Vikings, aren't we? At the end of the day, let's face it. We're all a bit French, a bit Viking, a bit Celtic, a bit Anglo-Saxon. It's just the way it is.
It's what happens when you live as an island in history. People just go, "Oh, I like the look of that island. I'm going to invade it." It's just
exactly.
You live on an island. You're going to have a very interesting background, whatever happens, if you go back far enough. Even though
I think it's hilarious. Like, we've got this divide, north-south divide. I mean, even in London, you got a north-south divide. You got east-west divide. And all these different dialects and different colloquial expressions and sayings and foods. And
I can remember.
Cultures. It's brilliant
because I've lived both north and south. So I sort of joke I'm a hybrid at times, and that's why my accent, I think sometimes it's hard for people to place me, because I was basically raised down south, but I've lived now up north for long enough, and because of my parents' background, it's influenced a lot of how I speak. And I can remember the first time I was around some mates, and like we were out somewhere. I think we were going on a theatre trip or something. And this little girl was just coming like down the aisle. And I said, "Oh, you're all right, love," to her, because she looked like she was looking for somebody. And afterwards, they all turned around to me and went, "What did you call her?" I said, "I called her love." And they just looked at me like I'd said an alien word.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Honestly.
And I was just like, that's really, for northern slang, that's like nothing.
Yeah, but they're trying to ban that now. Like, by saying it's sexist and things like that. But, it's just so fucking tiring, this nonsense.
Sorry, what's sexist? I was just looking at the chat.
Calling someone love.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, I remember, like a few years ago, they were talking about cancelling the word love in a sentence when we're referring to someone as love or dear or whatever.
Yeah, here's the thing.
Condescending or something bullshit.
Because you don't know it, idiots. I'm guessing you were saying this. It applies to blokes. It's not just women.
Exactly.
You say it to blokes. If I saw a little lad, I'd also say to him, "You're right, love." Like, it's a general northern term.
Yeah. And if people don't get that and are offended by that, the problem is entirely yours. Right?
Yes.
Go get a fucking life, get a job, do something else, take your mind off of your fucking personal issues for once, and stop navel gazing and comparing what genitals you have to everyone else, and
Or
making that your be and end all.
Or go to a traditional northern pub and say that to a load of blokes in a pub and see what response you get. Because I can tell you, it won't be pretty. It will not be pretty.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just don't get it. Yeah, I mean, how people are so easily offended by words of violence. Silence is violence. I mean, you can't fucking win either way. But it's so infantile. It's this kind of id, like the primary baby-like response to everything, which is not the ego, it's the id. It's the I need this now. I want that. I don't want that. That kind of thing, right? The immediate kind of reactionary thing that babies have. And that's exactly what it is. They have not progressed even to ego yet. They're still on their id, and they're in their teens and 20s, for crying out loud.
Oh my God.
Get over yourselves.
JC, can you just go
So what's the alternative?
Yeah, I saw that the other day. Yeah, JT says that they're also trying to ban the word lad in the army. Yeah, I saw that.
So what's the alternative?
Going lad. What's that?
So, but I'm sorry, that would. But that you're talking about blokes.
Yeah, because there might be someone who doesn't identify as a lad in the army.
Okay.
Yeah, because being the best you can be is now. Everyone must kowtow to the woke brigade, because when you're on the front line in Fallujah or wherever, you really need someone who's fixated on their pronouns, to make sure. I mean, these people are going to get shot very quickly, like in a hot situation, if they're not fully on board and connected and bonded with each other. And quite often, if you're bonding with someone, calling someone lad is part of the fucking process. If you can't get on board with that, maybe you don't belong in the fucking army.
No, but it's not an army thing. Banter.
Banter.
That's what people do.
Well, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to control language, and therefore, if you control the language, you control the culture, you control people, right? That's exactly how the process works. If you start manipulating what people can and cannot say, you're creating instant discord with human interaction, and by doing that, you're exploding that human connection by making everything so fraught, and I see it online, how people talk to each other online. They almost, every time they make some utterance that might be considered controversial or a specific type of opinion that may be, may make someone have ire with it, they always seem to present every idea with a prefix attached to it. They always announce that they're going to say something controversial and apologize in advance before they say it. That is no way to live your life. Fucking just come out and say it, accept the consequences, and be an adult about it. And if people can't handle it, when there's no intent of malice, if there's no offering of insult and they take it as insult, then the problem is theirs because it's not intended, okay? We are adults, we're capable of nuanced conversation, and to say things without having to prefix everything with a pre-apology or a fucking safe space warning or whatever. If you can't handle opinions, you need to grow up faster than you are currently at, because you are immature and you need to get a grip. I know life is hard. We've all been there. We are all, funnily enough, living and experiencing our own problems and still managing to hold adult conversations. Join us. The party is fun. Your party isn't fun, because your party's full of people crying in a corner going, I can't handle it. I want things my own way. And it doesn't happen like that. You have to earn it.
It's like my sort of thing with people, like if that I know they're a good friend or somebody who I can get on with, if I can call them. I've always said this, like if my best mate, it's like we've called each other everything underneath the sun and we're still best mates, and that's proof to me that that's somebody who I utterly trust.
Yeah.
I mean, for God's sake, like me and Daniel,
if you can't call your best friend a cunt, right?
Okay, that's a bit. We don't do that.
That's wrong, but okay.
But if you can't, but if you can't feel comfortable enough to, okay, I'll use an extreme example there. But if you can't do that and feel comfortable with each other after that, and if you're going to fall out over a term of endearment, which is maybe a bit crazy and far out there, fine, a word that may be offensive to some people. Look, if your friends aren't comfortable with you for being like that, they're not your friends, and they're not really worth your time in the first place. And maybe, like, I don't think a lot of this current mob that we see on Twitter have friends. I think they have allies. I think they have acquaintances, and they have mobs and groups that they belong to, and they all speak the same way because they're too afraid not to speak the same way. That is no way to live your life. That is not you being your true authentic self. That's you kowtowing to peer pressure and denying your individuality for the cost of joining a group which isn't real. Just so we're clear. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's just like more the ability to call out. It's like I'll say to Daniel, like, no, you're being an idiot. Like, stop. If he tells me about stuff, I go, no, get over it. Almost.
She tells me that all the time. It's become a.
Are you being cuckolded?
It's become a daily thing. I know.
Yeah, secretly, guys. Secretly, I bully Daniel. He's now coming out and telling you all.
Oh, quite honestly, I think Daniel deserves it. Sorry, Daniel. Brother, sorry.
And to be fair, though, I do sort of overanalyze and stuff, though, and I think Charlotte will together. You have a
you have the double-edged sword, mate, of having your heart on your sleeve. Yeah, that's how I put
it. Absolutely. But there's nothing wrong with that either. That, for me, is a strength of personality. Yeah. You're not trying to pretend to be something you're not. You're being. That's what I see as an authentic self, right there. Yeah. And I appreciate that, and I think that that's a genuine sensitivity, not a contrivance to get sympathy or anything. And I think you're quite reserved in expressing. You don't cry about it. You don't go off every single 5 minutes going, I'm being attacked. I don't know what to do. You know, half the time we have to draw it out of you. But you're honest, you're open, and I respect you for that 100%. And I'll always 100% have your side and your back and whatever, front, top down, whatever. You're covered by a force field of support by me and by everyone here. And I just wanted to also go to JT's point there in the chat, which is 20 years ago. People said PC is going mad. They were right, but none of us saw the extent. Well, I think we did, but I think we didn't do enough about it. And like everything else, the long march through the institutions, and here we are. They dressed up Marxist ideology as postmodernism, which is really post-Marxism. And we've talked about the long, slow march through the institutions for years, but people didn't do anything about it. And I think that's really down to my generation, quite honestly, for being a bit too sort of, I'm going to go out and take lots of ecstasy and dance for 28 hours. And
there's all said, YouTube, and there's no said, YouTube doesn't swearing or any soul. Also, no.
Yeah, you fuckers. Keep it clean.
Problem is saying it for everybody. So we don't need any more in the chat.
We've got privilege, you see.
Yeah, it's only the people that are part of the dream that are allowed because you're a date space. Basically, if it was up to me, you could say anything you want. No, I can't, but it's YouTube's bullshit regulation. Say you go, I've just dropped
I think we've broken a record between the two of you today.
Yeah.
What have we done?
So, so anyway, we're about to wrap up for the night, guys, but have your shout outs before we wrap up.
Do you want me to go first? Or
You go first. You go first.
Yeah.
You go. You're the queen, ma'am.
Yes,
Sorry,
of course.
Ma'am is in hand.
Yes. I would do a shout out to this Facebook where the wonderful J2's in the chat is usually on, and when tech allows me to, I pop on Stan streams, and also at some point I will be popping on Jed Toad. I tried not to muck it up then.
Yeah, Jed.
Because he's gonna do a Doctor Who thing, he said to me soon, so I'll be popping up on there. So those are my two that I know I'm roughly going to be on at some point in the future.
Yeah, and obviously our problematic you get coming up.
Apart from putting the world to rights, you can find me on Twitter at Being Problem. Please go on to Jim Davison. God, no, don't do that. Peter Davison's Facebook profile. It's still up. It's still up there. He hasn't shut it down. It's still up there. Go and find it. His last post was from 2017 where he said he was done with this toxic fandom. Don't blame him. Please go on there. Wish him a happy birthday. Hashtag #back. Hashtag happy birthday 5. Show him your love. Let's see if we can't bring him back. I mean, I wouldn't blame him for not coming back, quite honestly. But, you know, let's show him that we're thinking of him and that, you know, if he does come back, he has our support. There's that. Also, I'll be appearing on Cockney Spock, Captain Cockney Spock's channel in, what is it? In a few minutes, I guess, soonish, I think, maybe, I don't know. But go and check it out. Should be there, I think. What else? Go and check out the single Ocean Man, Meltdown Ocean Man. It's on iTunes, Amazon, etc., on Spotify and so on and so forth. 75% of which goes to charity. And that's about it. Obviously, check out Black Glove Studio and their audio dramas as well. Go and subscribe to them on Twitter and their YouTube channel. I think it's Studio 7, spelled SEVERN. And also, well, JT's in the chat. Check out Dan's the Spacebook channel. You find plenty of action on there. And obviously Noel's channel, TARDIS Zone, will be there during the week. Friday, usually you've got TARDIS Zone talks. You've got the weekend, we've got the watch-alongs. And his other channel as well, Irish Geek. Go and check that out and subscribe. Rabbi's channel. Rabbi from Another Planet. Go and subscribe to him. And what else? Clobbering Times. That's another channel. A good friend of ours. There you go. I think that's everything.
And in terms of myself, I've been about
shopping channel.
About 9 p.m. I'll be on Community Sports
yes,
channel.
of course.
So, like, if you see me, actually in stitches on afternoon of tonight, I do apologise because I can't.
Sorry, I'm with him, so I can help him. That's fine.
This gruesome twosome on my right.
Because
are appearing on Cockney Spock's channel on Thursday, so that will be awesome. That's going to be hilarious.
Because as well, I can't get listening to streams without listening.
He's a funny guy. He's a funny guy.
So that'll be fun. I'll probably appear in the Dodgers and Hawks on Friday, and like you'll see me about and you'll see me about on social media other than that. I I still oranges like, share, and subscribe as I chase down 200 subscribers. I want to that I want to get to that target by the end of the year. And also as our channel has passed 30,000 views as well. So thanks very much to everybody um, everybody that tunes into the streams. But I went to the stream because Purple Beans on Oxney's channel. So I'll see you all in Thursday night on Oxney's Ox channel.
Yes, do
Have a
it.
good one, folks.
Thank you.